Hi there, welcome back to Tabletop Sagas. Brett here, and today I thought that I would jump back in and show you what I've been working on for my Napoleonics. So without any further ado, let's get some miniatures, let's dive right in here. And here are the lovely miniatures, all in their 10mm glory. These are from Turner Miniatures. You can find on my mini factory, links down in the description below. And as you can see here, there's quite a little bit less, about half than what I'd done in the previous video. That's not due to a lack of interest or anything like that. That's just, being back to the new year and everything, back to work and all. It's been, there's been less of a, let's just say, production line of these miniatures. But that's perfectly okay because we've still got more than enough here, I think, to add to the force and make it quite a respectable little force at this point. But let's have a look at some of these in a little bit more detail. So first up, we've got the riflemen. These are actually the King's German Legions. This is the 1st and the 2nd Battalion for the King's German Legion's light riflemen. So they are just the riflemen infantry models. They just happen to be from the King's German Legion. They wear the same uniforms as like the 95th and such, and they just happen to be Germans. And then we also have the Light Dragoons for the English. These are the 11th or the 12th? Let's just have a quick look. The 12th Light Dragoons, so the Prince of Wales. And so yeah, adding in a nice little bit of mobility to the force and a little bit more of some special forces rather than just the mass of line infantry that I've been doing previously. But as I say, let's have a bit of a look in a bit more detail and bring these a little bit closer to the camera. So here's the first base for the King's German Legion. This is the 1st Battalion of the Light, or the 1st Rifles Light Battalion King's German Legion is what I should say, or at least that's what I've noted them as here. And they are in that traditional green rather than in the bright red. Not 100% sure on this green at this scale, I've got to admit. It doesn't look too bad, but I do think it is maybe a little bit too dull, a little bit too dark for the scale. I do wonder whether maybe just a shade brighter might have been the way to go, but I don't know. Let me know what you think. What do you think about the colours that I've used for these? And I'm aware asking for the colours for Napoleonics on the internet is always a dangerous game, but oh well, this is what I've done. So I am really happy with them though. They are really, really excellent models. You really can't fault the Turner Miniatures. They are spot on. And my decision now to put them actually all onto single strips has made these so much easier to base, so much easier to paint. And, I have dropped getting the drummers on these and any standards. I may come to regret that, but to be perfectly honest, I'm imagining light infantry, even though while they are fighting in line, they have gone to the battlefield with more of a plan to be skirmishers. So they're not going to have, drummers come along with them or standard bearers or anything like that. They are going to be all to a man fighting men. So that's how I have modelled them. And to be perfectly honest, I'm pretty happy with that look. And then here, just for sake of completeness, this is the other half of the force. The only one that we have got is a guy with a trumpet, but even he does still have a rifle slung in his back. So even he is a fighting man. And then obviously my usual basing techniques for these. They are also on 25 by 50s, my standard infantry size. And I am really liking how these look. When you put both of these together, this really does look, at least to me, like that is a fighting force. But moving on to the cavalry. So these are the Light Dragoons. They are the Prince of Wales, the 12th Light Dragoons in their blue. Little bit unusual, but a nice change from all of the red that I had been painting. I suppose that, along with the green, if anything, that has kind of been the theme for today. Now, I did make the choice, and I have no doubt that some people will argue with this and disagree with this, and fair enough, I've chose to paint all of the horses in a very motley colours. So we've got some dark brown, some lighter brown, some cream, white, grey, black, anything really. My thinking here, I know that by the Napoleonic era, cavalry tended to prefer to try and mount all of their guys on the same colour horses for, to be honest, I suspect aesthetic reasons rather than any actual practicality. But I also do suspect that in the middle of a war, particularly something like the 100 Days campaign, where, you know, Europe's been a decades of war. It's tired. Everything has been replaced and replaced again multiple times over due to the amount of fighting. 100 Days was a mad scramble as, you know, Napoleon came back from Elba, was expecting to be stopped, and then the army defected over to him, and he was trying to do this lightning campaign in order to force favourable terms from the Allies. It all happened so quickly. I've got to imagine that in a state of 20 years war, or certainly really for the British since really the Peninsular War, so 8 years of solid fighting, you're going to put your Dragoons on whatever forces, whatever horses even that you can find. So that's been my logic for why I've done it. Also, as well, I couldn't find any references to exactly what were common colours for light Dragoon horses. If anybody knows that, let me know. And I will obviously factor it in. I might up the percentages of grey horses if those were the main ones and things like that. But, you know, for the minute, we'll stick with what we've got. Also, worth mentioning this guy here. You can see I have put a standard bearer in with these guys. I do suspect that they probably didn't have standard bearers with the light Dragoons, similar to the riflemen. But, and this is really kind of a little bit of where, you know, the sort of the gamification, I guess, comes in, which is that these are going to be blue. The French are going to be blue. Let's put a flag on these so that we can see that, okay, that's a British flag or a British regimental flag, so I can know which force these are part of. Just makes things a little bit easier on the gaming table. And also as well, just plain flags are cool. Flags look good in a force. So sometimes I'm going to add them when maybe they're not necessary. Again, I'm sure there will be people who very much vehemently disagree with that, but that's what I've decided to do. I may not do it for every force as well, or every regiment. I may change my mind, but I've done it for these ones. So that's really where we're at in terms of our painted models for this week. So there we have it. That is 3 new units to add to my force on top of the 6 that I showed you from last month's video. So that is 8 units of infantry, 2 of which are rifles, and then 1 unit of light dragoons. So really nice force. And where do I want to go from here? That's the question. So I think from here, I'm good for infantry for the minute. I do plan to expand out into the Hanoverian division for the corps, but we'll get to that in a little while. I think first of all, I want another unit of cavalry, so 8 and 2, and then a battery. So that's going to be some cannons to add into the mix as well, and then some command bases to go along with this. Now, I do not know if I'll need the command bases. I think if I'm going to be playing Black Powder, then I am going to need them. But if I'm playing another game, I might not. And the reason why I mention that is because what has come in the post today, but a new set of Napoleonic rules. Specifically, La Salle from Sam Mustafa. So I've heard great things about this guy, particularly in his game Beluga, which as I understand is the higher corps and army level sort of game, but has some really nice mechanics for sort of the push and pull and some really nice flavour for the Napoleonic era. So given that, I thought let's try his smaller level game, which is La Salle. So this is a game of tabletop battles in the Age of Napoleon by Sam Mustafa, and is intended for more divisional, maybe up to a single cause worth, which is what I think this force is going to be, at least to begin with. I do plan to expand it out. Ideally, like I say, I want to do the full, Waterloo with it. That's maybe a pie in the sky sort of dream, but that's what I want. So the idea of smaller engagements, I might use black powder, or if I try this and I find that I do like it, then I will use La Salle. And I'm thinking for the really big games, I am thinking Blucher. There really isn't a competitor that I'm aware of, or somebody else with the skin in the game for the really big armies. And that's what I would love to eventually get to. Obviously, if you do know of any, do let me know down in the comments below. But this is not all that the postman has brought this week. In fact, yesterday, he also brought me some other books. And a good chunk of books it is as well. So here is 7 books, I believe, is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all from Osprey. So these are their small blue books, and then the campaign book, the red one. And I know what some people might say. I know some people are not massively a fan of the Osprey publishing books. They are quite high level, not always a massive amount of detail in them, which is absolutely fair and understandable. Why I can understand somebody who's maybe more experienced in the era would not find these books particularly useful beyond maybe reference images. But for somebody such as myself, who's really just starting to get into Napoleonics, well, to be perfectly honest, a bite-sized book, 100 pages or something like that, absolutely, these are they're perfect for me. They're little primers, high-level detail on a subject with great bibliographies that when I do want to deep dive into, say, flags of the Napoleonic Wars, I've got the two, so I've got, a lot of the French one in here, I've got a lot of the British and the Prussian in here, and, that's great. When I really want to dive into specifically what was going on with the British flags, then I'm sure there'll be bibliographies in the back of this that will point me towards some really in-depth information if I ever do happen to need it. So that's where this project is at the minute. There's been a lot of buying, a fair bit of painting, and a good bit of planning for the next force, which will round out my first phase for the British, and then we'll be on to those dastardly French. As always though, do be sure, if you want to see more of this series and see where I go with this, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. While you're there, maybe consider giving a like as well. It does massively help out the channel. And of course, feel free to put a comment, let me know what are you working on, what do you think about La Salle, what do you think about Osprey? Is there any other rule systems I should consider checking out? I am probably going to want to play a few before I do settle on anything definite. So let me know all that and more down below. As always though, thank you very much for watching today. I've been Brett here at Tabletop Sagas, and I'll see you in the next video.